right, welcome to the Kruger Show, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great September the 18th. It's 8:48 on the West Coast, 11:48 on the East Coast. And welcome to the Kruger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out, and they do run out. Get some brisket chili. Tell them the Krug sent you. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California. Call my good friend Anthony Catania down there with Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. He's at 831-521-5264. And as you can see on the bottom of the screen, our brand new graphics. Look at that. It looks nice, Kev.
Fancy.
This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. We've done it. We turned $10 into $90 in the preseason. Download the app below. Make sure you use that promo code Niners, NINERS, to get your first deposit matched up to $200. And we will take a look at some better propositions, let's just call them.
Let's leave it at that.
Before this
more or less action
stream is over. All right, let's get right into it because a bunch of things I want to get to. I picked 8 or 9 topics.
Wow.
That I thought we could get into, and we're just going to rapid fire through them as fast as possible tonight. And we start with Emmanuel Acho. Emmanuel Acho says people who say that the Niners are going to be bad or expect the Niners to be bad as soon as they have to start paying Brock Purdy big dollars. Well, maybe they haven't thought it through. Here's Emmanuel Acho.
The myth that the Niners are going to be without talent once Brock Purdy gets paid.
Because he still do got it.
Like, for those that don't realize, Talanoa Hufanga was a 5th-round pick, All-Pro. Fred Warner, a 3rd-round pick, future Hall of Famer. George Kittle was a 5th-round pick, All-Pro. The Niners know how to draft, particularly late in the draft. So to say that the Niners will be without talent once Brock Purdy gets paid is ignorant, it's uneducated, it's uninformed, and it has a lack of research as it pertains to the San Francisco 49ers. Not only will they have talent even when Brock Purdy gets paid, Kyle Shanahan is the machine. Y'all realize Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey's backup running back, undrafted Jordan Mason, is on pace for 2,100 yards? No, he won't get there. But if he started all season, he'd probably get to 1,600. So it's not even like the Niners need all of these stars. They went to the Super Bowl without Christian McCaffrey, with Matt Breida, Jeff Wilson, and Raheem Mostert.
All right. Well, what do you think, Dieter? I mean, he's kind of pushing back on that commonly held wisdom that the Niners are somehow in this last dance mode. Yeah. I've kind of pushed back on the last dance mode just simply because it's not the last dance. They haven't won anything. So you can't compare yourself to the Bulls who won 6 when you've won nothing. Okay.
Well, they had won 5 to that point. So yeah, the last dance was number 6. I
mean, come on, you can't.
Yeah, a little bit different.
That right there is not a good comparison. But then there's also I also kind of push back on the notion that the Niners are cooked once they pay Purdy, because I don't believe that's the case. I think the 49ers have done they've been kind of the opposite of the way most teams are. Most teams hit on their 1st and 2nd round pick, and then they blow all their day 3 picks. The Niners have been the opposite. The Niners have been hitting on day 3 and hitting after the draft. But they're not hitting on day 1. In fact, they've swung and missed almost more than almost any team in pro football on day 1. So I just kind of look at it as long as they draft better in day 1 and day 2, they'll be able to withstand the fact that they're paying Brock Purdy big money. How do you see the Brock Purdy era when he starts getting paid?
Well, you're right. They're going to have to draft better. And I think that the way I structured that sentence tells you what I really think. They'll have to draft better. To this point, they have not built up an infrastructure that can sustain serious injury, much less serious year-over-year losses, and the depreciation of the assets that they already have. Not to put it in very cold terms, but it's just a fact of the matter. We're seeing right now the issues that this team has with depth. You look at the defensive line against Minnesota. I mean, Leonard Floyd was a joke. You're bringing in Yetur Gross-Matos, who's fine. After that, you got Robert Beal. Drake Jackson doesn't have a job anymore, right? You think about the offensive line. and where they're at. They had to pay Trent Williams whatever he wanted, and he deserved it. Don't get me wrong. But you got Aaron Banks next to him. Banks was not awesome against Minnesota, but he's a solid enough player. But now he's about to price himself out of town. You have Jake Brendel, whose days as the starting center for this team are numbered, but he's cheap. Pooney was really good in game 1. He was really bad in game 2. Get this. He's a rookie. It's going to be up and down. That's how it goes. And teams are going to attack him after all that hype he got, deservedly so, after game 1. And you got Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Who are the backups here, Larry? Like, who are the guys in waiting? You have a wide receiver in waiting, maybe 2 in Cowing and Pearsall, but we haven't seen anything to give you the indication that that's actually going to hit. You have a running back in waiting, and Isaac Arendo. He has 1 carry on the season. Defensive line, you got nothing. Middle linebacker, you got nothing. You had to bring in Devondre Campbell because you didn't trust D. Winters. Now, maybe that changes as the season progresses. You feel pretty good about the secondary, but if Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore leave, well, now you're really leaning on young guys in the secondary. Now you're really leaning on a guy like Renardo Green. Now you're really leaning on a guy like Darrell Luter. And maybe one of those two will hit. I'm very high on Green. And one of the areas that they are young in right now, and you can say, oh, they've drafted so well, safety is a hot mess. If we've learned anything from the first 2 games of the San Francisco 49ers, is that their safety play has been beyond suboptimal, and that Jair Brown is getting attacked again and again and again. And I love Jair Brown's talent, and I love the head that's on his shoulders. But ultimately, until he stops somebody from picking on him, he's going to get picked on. And safeties are destiny in the NFL. And right now, the 49ers' destiny isn't looking so hot. And I'm not trying to overreact to one game. That was a tough schematic matchup. They didn't execute on 3rd and 4th down. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to lose games in the NFL. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. But the idea that this team has just some abundant well of talent coming through the system, and that a lot of these veterans who are outstanding, who do make the 49ers that we talk about as Super Bowl contenders, the fact that anyone thinks that there's, guys coming in behind them to take it, like, that's just not the case across the board. And even in the places that it is apparent, the drop-off is going to be significant. I think you need to continue to draft well. You need to hit. A lot of these rookies we're giving the benefit of the doubt to because they haven't played enough football yet to really say that they stink or are good. And honestly, I think the 49ers have been one of the worst drafting teams in recent years, outside of, a couple of basically flyer hits, a couple times winning the lottery. And by the way, every team has those successes. They have been paying for trading Trey Lance. Not that they should have kept him, but the trade for Trey Lance, they've been paying the price on that. The trade for Christian McCaffrey, they've loved the returns, but they would have also liked to have used the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round picks that they traded for Christian McCaffrey. They went all the way in. They pushed all their chips in, and they didn't do enough on the periphery to 2, 3, 4x their investment on low draft picks to say that you have this sort of deep roster, because the roster isn't currently deep. And ultimately, I don't think that you're going to be in a spot next year to where you can make up the deficiencies that currently exist. But that's my take. And ultimately, it's not up to, they have to play football. And there will be guys that we miss on, and there will be guys that we're right on, and we'll find out.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at their depth chart and just look at where these guys, they did hit, Jawan Jennings, 7th round.
Great pick.
Colton McKivitz, 5th round. George Kittle, 5th round. Brock Purdy,
George
7th round.
5th rounder in what? 2017. I mean,
17, Kittle, 5th round.
Yeah, but no one's arguing that. But when you've had now 7, 8 bites at the apple, and you get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 picks every day, 3, you better hit on some of them. Now, to be fair, a hit isn't a very high bar, right? You just have to get somebody who can be on a roster for 3 or 4 years, right? Get to that second contract. In these cases, you're getting all pro players with a Fred Warner and George Kittle. I just also think that this idea that other teams don't do this is somewhat foolhardy. Other teams have successes in late rounds. Half the NFL is undrafted free agent guys, it seems like. So the idea that the Niners are the only team that has success on day 3 is kind of ludicrous. They've probably had more top-end success, but then there's also Ronnie Bell, and you don't hold Ronnie Bell against him because he was a late-round pick, but he's still on the damn roster, which shows you how shallow the talent pool is in some places. So,
well, I mean, I look at them and I just did a quick count as you were talking there.
yeah.
The Niners have somewhere in the neighborhood of 16 or 17 day 3 picks.
Yeah.
On their roster. Just a quick rundown. Juwan Jennings, Colton McKivitz, George Kittle, Brock Purdy. Those are your starters on offense. But then you also have, other day 3 picks on this roster: Garendo, Nick Zakel, Spencer Burford, Jalen Moore, Jacob Cowing, Ronnie Bell.
Yep.
Those are all on the offensive side. On the defensive side, there's not a lot, but Robert Beal, 5th round, Givens, undrafted, D Winters, round 6, Tatum Bethune, 7th round, Malik Mustafa, 4th round, Darrell Luter Jr., 5th round, Demo, 5th round, Hufanga, 5th round. And then, of course, Mitch Wishnowsky in the 4th round. So, I mean, the Niners do have a great track record of day 3. But if they're going to really, climb the top of the mountain, they have to put together a couple years in a row of they hit on their 1st and 2nd and 3rd round draft choices. And they have not been able to do that during this regime. And that, to me, has left them just a little bit on the outside looking in as far as talent goes. And I think if you ask me, why have they not gotten it done? I would say that. I would say that they wasted too many of their day 1 and day 2 picks on bad selections or bad trades. And they have not been able, even though they've been awesome on day 3 and really awesome after the draft, but you can't miss on as many day 1, day 2, day 3 picks. I mean, think about it. Dante Pettis, bust. Jalen Hurd, bust. Not to mention McGlinchey.
Go through every round.
3 picks for Lance and the, we can just
round 3 pick they've ever had, save for Fred Warner,
Trey Sermon, and I mean they've wasted a ton, of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round draft choices, and it's to this point I would say that is the main reason they've fallen short. But it's also, in a way, it's hard to hit on day 3 of the draft, so they're doing that. If they can just hit on day 1 and day 2, I think they'll be able to withstand the fact that they're going to have to pay Purdy more, and they're going to have to go with some younger players, because I think they can find those guys on day 3 and after the draft. But
it's also just
missing.
It's a fundamentally flawed premise. There's no alternative. Right? It is what it is, and we'll find out in due time. But you have to pay Purdy. I don't care what people think about Brock Purdy. The cost of competence, as we've seen with Dak Prescott, and we've seen with Kirk Cousins, the cost of competence is exorbitant. And the real cost is not having competence back there. And you can say, oh, well, Kyle Shanahan will always figure it out. No, he won't, right? If you get a Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a fringe NFL starter, he'll figure it out. But he couldn't figure it out with Brian Hoyer, who had aged out. He couldn't figure it out with C.J. Beathard. He couldn't figure it out with Nick Mullins. There are a lot of quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan has worked with who don't automatically just look like Brock Purdy. We talk about a system quarterback. Yes, Brock Purdy is a beneficiary of the 49ers system, but that's not to say that Brock Purdy is some scrub and that anybody can do it. Clearly, they cannot. And you just have to pay him. There's no alternative. It's just
there's no question. Yeah, they're going to have to pay him. Do they have to pay him record-setting money? I don't know, but they're going to pay him a ton, and it is going to alter their cap quite a bit.
No doubt.
How do you evaluate Purdy thus far? He's leading the league in yards. Yeah. Yards thrown for the most yards in the league so far through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A lot of people were really down on him in this game, but then when you go look at those numbers, I mean, I watched the game a couple times. I just, to me, Dieter, I understand that this wasn't Brock's greatest game. He held the ball too long. He was 2 for 10 on 3rd downs. And even that's a little deceptive to be honest. He was sacked 6 times, but it was probably more like 4.
Yeah,
a couple of those were scrambles that they were 0 negative yardage sacks that he got back to the line of scrimmage almost, but technically Van Ginkel tackled him, so it's a sack. But a lot of people were, I was watching. There's some guy, and I don't want to name him because I don't want to give him any credibility. But there was this content creator who's just screaming and yelling about, you have to be able to say he had a bad game. And it's like, okay, relax. It's like, what? I mean, the Niners lost for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
Brock Purdy was like 11th on my list of why they lost. And then I went and looked at his numbers compared to the rest of the league.
Yeah.
What I found out was that one, obviously Brock Purdy's 18-5. That's his career record. But only 3 quarterbacks in week 2 threw for 300 yards or more. It was Purdy, Geno Smith, and Jared Goff. And only 6 or 7 quarterbacks completed 75% of their passes in week 2, which is really high for any week. But 5 or 6 guys did it, and Purdy was one of them at 78% completion percentage. And then I looked at, well, who's on both lists? Who threw for 300 plus yards and completed over 75%? Just Brock Purdy and Geno Smith. The entire league. There was 2 guys in week 2 that threw for 300 or more and completed 75% or more. And it was Brock Purdy and Geno Smith. Now, Geno won, Brock lost. But this whole, he's going up against a defense that I think is one of the most difficult defenses for a quarterback to go up against. Why? Because you have to find the hot route on every snap, and then you have to they played a lot of zone, and I counted at least a half dozen plays where they rushed 3, kind of spied and dropped everybody else. So they had 4 guys devoted to it, but they only really rushed 3, and they left the third guy kind of in the middle of the defense.
Yeah,
so
and they would do that after a zero blitz, right? Like that's
they just did a zero blitz, and now here comes dropping 8, and it's like then you have to go from the opposite of where's my hot route to I got to go through my progressions, I got to find the soft spot in the zone, I've got to show patience, and I've got to survey the entire field. So on one hand, if you're getting a 6-man pressure, ball's got to come out. It's got to come out now, and it's got to come out in the right place at the right time with accuracy. And then that's every other snap. And then every other snap, you've got to scan the field, read the field, find the soft spot in the zone, and make sure you don't lead any of your receivers into harm's way. I mean, I just think when you factor in who they were playing and what he actually did, if you're jumping up and down about Brock Purdy about this game, you don't know what the hell you're watching. I mean, I don't know what to say. Well, he wasn't great, but there's a big difference between he wasn't great and yelling and screaming that he ain't the guy and, he was exposed. And I mean, it's like, come on, man.
The notion
that's
that
not what happened there.
The notion that he was exposed implies that other teams can do the same thing willy-nilly. Now, I will say this. If you want to beat the San Francisco 49ers, you do what Mike McDonald did last year with the Ravens or what Brian Flores has done the 2 times the 49ers have played the Vikings. Brock has a real problem and a real hard time with the defenses that I just described, the way that you described it in detail, right? The chaos defenses is what I call them. We're putting 9 guys on the line of scrimmage.
If you have the personnel
and this
to
is
make
what I'm
it
saying.
work.
This is what I'm saying. You just think that you can show up one week and now you're putting 9 guys on the line of scrimmage and you're dropping 7, but you don't know which ones. Like, only so many teams can do that. Frankly, I think it's 2 of them. The Patriots, the Ravens barely do it anymore, not to the same degree under their new defensive coordinator. And Seattle is leaning into it, but they haven't gotten all the way there. One guy really does it, and it's Brian Flores. And by the way, he's got that thing humming. That was a wild.
Yes.
Did they blow a single coverage in that game? It was wildly impressive what they were doing. Because when you watch it on the All-22, you're like, there should be spots. And listen, we don't know the exact play call, but when you're watching it, you go, these guys seem pretty damn organized, and they are going out there and doing the most on every snap, guaranteed. And for a quarterback whose offensive line did not help him whatsoever, having to be in that situation where you are having to either go 100 miles per hour or 1 mile per hour based on the speed limit of the play is jarring. And it will put you in bad spots when you're a young quarterback. And frankly, probably put any quarterback in those bad spots. I'm not going to grade on the curve, though. I thought he was underwhelming in this game. I thought he made bad decisions in this game. A lot of people wanted to go in on Brandon Ayuk's separation. Not saying Brandon Ayuk had a good game either. But separation score, typically, depending on where you get it, there are some advanced numbers that are pulling the data from every single snap. But when we're talking NFL next gen and things like that, we're talking about separation average on targets. And when I watched even the first half, I had 4, if maybe 5 plays where Brandon Ayuk's wide open. It would make sense for him to be in the progression. And Brock Purdy didn't get to him because, well, his center got bowled over by Harrison Phillips, or Colton McKivitz is dying on the right side, or Trent Williams is getting his ass kicked by Van Ginkel again. And when you have an offensive line that doesn't help you, you're 6'1", you're going up against a chaos defense, so you don't really know what's happening until after the ball is snapped. Yeah, you're going to miss some wide open lanes to throw the ball. For sure. And that's what he did. And I'm not sure how much more studying he could have done to get him in a position. The offensive line had to play better. And Brock Purdy probably needed to escape the pocket more. All these things that you can say maybe he did do as the game went along. It just didn't matter because it wasn't consistently excellent enough. The execution wasn't solid enough to win the football game. And ultimately, you look at some of the numbers and you say to yourself, actually, I think he had a better game than Sam Darnold, who I almost called Andy Dalton because he's effectively the same thing these days. The fact is they were on the same plane in that game, and that's not a compliment to Brock Purdy. Maybe it's a compliment to Sam Darnold. I thought Darnold was meh, and I thought Brock Purdy was meh. Does that mean that he's not a $60 million quarterback? Does that mean that he shouldn't be the guy for the 49ers down the line? Of course not, because I also saw him in week 1 look really, really good and execute and dominate in situational football. He didn't do that in week 2. I want a full season of yay or nay on executing on, situational football, big pressure moments, and then obviously the other stuff that happens before I make an evaluation of Brock Purdy. But so far, you're right. I don't know if it's 11th, but he is down the list of reasons the 49ers are 1-1 and not feeling so hot going into this game against the Rams on Sunday. He's down the list, but he's on the list.
It's fun. I crack up when I see some of these comments. Mitchell and Ness, Larry, relax. Jesus, when you turn the ball over multiple times and everyone has coach's tape, there's always overreaction. He did have a bad game, not to say he can't bounce back. That's what I'm saying. Back.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a bad game. 319 yards. He completed almost 70% of his passes. He's going up. We just acknowledged that he's going up against one of the most difficult defenses to go up against. And then you take away CMC and you don't have really Ayuk at anything close to 100%. And to me, once again, people can't evaluate the quarterback versus what goes on around the quarterback. And what I saw is what's going on around the quarterback. Now I want to share the screen because my son tweeted this out, and he's totally right on. And this is a good one here. Let's see, where is it? Here it is.
We doing the over completion.
Brock Purdy leads the NFL in aggressive throw percentage,
That's
AGG right. percentage, 24.6. Okay, so what is AGG percentage? It tracks the percentage of passing attempts thrown into coverage where a defender is within 1 yard or less of the receiver. So among the top 8 quarterbacks in this AGG percentage, Brock has the highest quarterback rating and the highest completion percentage.
Yes.
Okay, so he's completing the highest percentage and he's throwing the ball down the field. He's also got 24.6% of his throws are within 1 yard or less, where the defenders and within 1 yard or less of the receiver. That's what I see. When I watched that film, that's what I saw, which is there's no separation. And Brock Purdy will throw the 50-50 ball.
Yes.
I didn't see any separation on any of the balls that he actually threw. I'm not saying that there was no separation because I went and double-checked it against the All-22. And, of course, there was separation at times. But guess what? You can watch every team in the league, and you will find separation at times all the time. There's almost no way for a corner to blanket the receiver up and down the field where there's never separation. The key is, when do you have separation, or when are you hugged up, and can you get away with it? You could have no set. You could have you could have a situation where the defender's nowhere around the receiver, but if the rush is getting to the quarterback and the quarterback can't make the corner pay. So I just look at this and I said, what did I see? I saw Brock Purdy throw fucking dime after dime after dime after dime for the most part. But I also saw almost 90% of the times he threw, the defender was right there. And there was at least 4 or 5 throws. I can think of the Van Ginkel fourth quarter throw to Debo that went through both of Van Ginkel's hands. I can think of the
Van Ginkel throw.
What's that?
The 4th down throw on near the goal line with Van Ginkel getting it.
The first throw of the game in the flat where he stared it down and kind of pump fake to it and then went to it again. That could have been a pick 6. I mean, there were several dangerous throws that Brock Purdy made, but that's who Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy's going to take chances. Brock Purdy's going to throw the 50-50 ball. So to me, the real issue here is that the Niner receivers are not getting consistent separation. And you see it on the film. I mean, and it makes perfect sense because they're slow as molasses. This is the slowest group of receivers in the league. I mean, you show me the 40 times of every other receiving group in pro football, and I guarantee you the Niners are slower. JJ runs 4.76.
Right.
George runs 4.5s, but he's 30 years old, so that's what he ran coming out.
Anymore, yeah,
he doesn't run 4.5 anymore. Debo's doesn't separate either because of his route running or because of his speed.
I saw Antoine Griezmann lock him up.
CMC does, but he's not out there right now.
That's right.
So I'm just looking at them and I'm going, outside of Jacob Cowing, I don't see anybody who really separates.
To be fair, Ayuk was one of the finest separators in the NFL last year. He was statistically
but this year he doesn't quite look the same, does he?
No,
he's not getting the same results.
Nor did we expect it. Now, I will say this to defend Brandon Ayuk on this point. He looked like he was at the speed of the game against Minnesota. I saw multiple times him open, and it takes 11. Ayuk got himself open and separated plenty, in my estimation. The issue was that Brock couldn't get the ball to him because Brock was about to die because somebody was coming right down his neck because the offensive line couldn't hold up. Now, that wasn't the reason that guys weren't separating against the Jets. The reason that it wasn't separating against the Jets is because they have 3 of the best corners in the NFL and that those guys lock down everybody. And if you're not running it at Sauce Gardner, you're putting the game right in his hands because he's that good at corner. I'm fascinated to see because I'm not totally dismissing the premise, but I can explain it away, at least in my own mind. I'm fascinated to see what happens now with the Rams, who can't seem to cover anybody or rush anything. And if we're still in a situation where Brock Purdy is forcing the ball into really tight windows, then we can really go in on wide receivers. Now it's a real issue because there should be wide open windows to throw the ball and plenty of time to throw it against the Rams. So far, we haven't seen it because, again, great corners with the Jets and a great scheme as well. They just couldn't get to the quarterback. And then in this past game, they're getting to the quarterback with aplomb, and ultimately Brock isn't catching the guys who are open, and they're doing a good enough job with zone coverage and mixing and matching and fire stuff that the windows just weren't clean for Brock, given the acceleration he had to play with in order to get rid of the ball. So this is ultimately the week that will determine kind of what is what. And ultimately it might be nothing. It might have just been 2 tough matchups. We're going to find out.
Purdy passing yards through 2 weeks, 550, first in the NFL. Purdy completion percentage over expectation, 10.5%, second best in the NFL.
And that goes right along with the aggressive number, right? Like above expectation is, well, there's a guy covering you right there. Like Brock has made some absolute awesome throws. There's no question about it. He's also made some boneheaded decisions, and that's required awesome throws to get the ball to the receiver. So that's the trade-off. He has had more turnover-worthy throws this season than big-time throws, in my estimation. And I'll be the first one to say that I think Brock Purdy is a absolutely outstanding quarterback. I thought he managed week 1 exceptionally well, which is a rarity for him because usually he's a gunslinger. And in week 2, he's a gunslinger, and it backfired a little bit on him, though I'm not really sure what else he could have done against that scheme and with the protection that he had.
Average completed air yards for Purdy, 8.4, third best in the NFL. Quarterback rating, 96.3, 10th best in the NFL. The number, though, that I saw that I thought was amazing, and this was another one of Kev's stats that he tweeted out, but he said through 2 weeks, the 49er offense is averaging the lowest target separation in the NFL. The Panthers are 31st, and we know how bad they are at 3 yards. And the Niners are 32nd at 2.9 yards of target separation. Average target separation for the 49ers, 2.9 yards, 32nd in the NFL.
What do the Panthers and the 49ers have in common, though? Because I think they both actually have really good wide receivers. I think that the Panthers have a really good wide receiver core. You got Adam Thielen. You bring in Deontay Johnson. You now have Xavier Legette. I think they got dudes on that side. The problem is they both have smaller quarterbacks. Now, Brock is much sturdier than Bryce Young, but they're both diminutive by, I guess, Josh Allen, Cam Newton standards. And they both have offensive lines that are out there trying to get their diminutive quarterbacks killed. And Bryce Young doesn't have a job anymore because he isn't built for that game. Like, he's not capable of doing what he needed to do in order to get the ball to those receivers. And when he was getting the ball to the receivers, he was having to force it in there. And I think the exact same thing is happening with Brock, where he is trusting his arm, as well he should, because I guess the statistics bear out that it's worthy of that consideration. But he is trusting his arm to do the heavy lifting in this offense and really throw it into tight windows. I maintain that the larger windows are there. Brock just didn't get enough time or just missed them altogether because of the pass protection that he's received so far. Both of those teams have big time pass protection issues and quarterbacks who cannot see over the line naturally, and they don't want to leave the pocket unless they really have to. One of them doesn't have a job anymore. The other one leads the league in all these stats and is really, really good. That tells you how good Brock Purdy is, because a lesser quarterback would be out of a job by now.
Yeah, and we'll see. They're saying that it could be over for Bryce Young in Carolina, which would be shocking because it's it just started. It just started.
Come on down. The Kyle Shanahan School of Repair is always accepting new applicants.
Oh, he's going to wind up somewhere. In fact, the way NFL quarterbacks are now these days, I mean, the draft is speculative. Guys are coming out. It seems like they're a little younger. They're raw. I don't know that I would ever invest a top 5 pick in a quarterback. I'd have to really be sold that guy was like the guy, and I had no doubts about it, because it seems like the better way to go is to go find the reclamation project quarterback. I mean, you know what I mean? Somebody's going to do the reclamation on Young, and he'll probably reclaim his career.
I don't know
He's
if
a
he'll
very
reclaim
small
his
guy,
career,
though.
because I once saw a photo of him next to Mina Kimes, and boy, that was when I sold any stock that I might have run into.
He is very small, because he's not just short; he's also light. He's like
he's not athletic.
He was 5'10", 180, and he bulked up to 5'10", 200. But I'll say this, and I agree with Mel. I heard Mel Kiper going off on this the other day, and it's hilarious. If you watch last year's draft, if you want to see somebody they have that ice cold takes and awful takes or whatever.
Yeah, no, I've never been part of that at all.
Nobody had a worse take than Louis Riddick from ESPN, who did a goddamn soliloquy about how Bryce was absolutely going to the perfect spot where they are perfectly situated to develop him with the right head coach, the right quarterback coach, the right general manager, the right offensive coordinator. Everything's right. They've set this up. It is perfect, blah, blah, blah. Here we are, like less than 2 years later. It's like half those guys have been fired. Most of those guys are not there anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, so much for that, Lewis, that he was going to this ideal situation. But you never, and now CJ Stroud's a star. By the way, I thought CJ Stroud tried to talk to Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams just blew him off. It's like Caleb Williams thinks he's just the coolest guy of all time. It's kind of funny to watch Caleb Williams. It's like Caleb Williams acts like he's really, really good. And either he's going to be
Man
really,
has
really
a
good.
Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, he's either going to be really, really good, or he's just
Yeah.
acting like he's really good. Because CJ Stroud was trying to give him some love and some pointers, and he was having none of it, man. He was just like, yeah.
Well,
Right, right.
I'm not sure he was all the way there, given how his offensive line played in that game. But I'll say this for Caleb right now. You and I both in the drafts had our skepticism about Caleb. I think it's far too early to say one way or another, and I'm not trying to evade taking a victory lap here, but like there is a potential for him to actually figure out how to operate inside a pocket. There, and if that clicks, it's kind of over in the sense of he can be so good because he still looks special outside the pocket, and they got nothing for him on that offensive line to protect him. He gets out of that pocket, he can make stuff happen, and if he can just figure out how to run an offense, easier said than done. And I don't know if he's in an environment where that's going to happen. But man, you cannot teach that kind of improvisational talent. You just need to harness it a little bit better. And we'll find out in due time. But it's not as if he's some small guy getting battered around either. He looks physically capable of it. I've seen him make some absolutely monster throws. It's just going to be a work in progress. And you got to wonder, with all these young quarterbacks that are getting thrown into the fire, like, could they have done, everyone wants the next Mahomes. Well, Patrick Mahomes sat for a season. Patrick Mahomes was behind there learning everything he could from Alex Smith, getting the full install from Andy Reid. The most telling thing I saw from a rookie quarterback this past week was Bo Nix going into the huddle and not being able to get out a play call in time. And they have to call a timeout because they don't break the huddle until there's like 4 or 5 seconds left because Bo Nix cannot get Sean Payton's ridiculous verbiage out in one fell swoop, and they're going to take a delay game. Comically late breaking the huddle because he couldn't get the play call out. That stuff doesn't happen if you spend a year learning how to be an NFL quarterback. And I would much prefer, this is something that Tom Brady goes on all the time about, like they've dumbed down offense. I'd much prefer the high level offense and a little bit of delayed gratification on the young hotshot quarterback than having to dumb down an offense at the NFL level so that you can get a guy in there early. That's what I would prefer. I can wait a little bit on the guy that everyone's excited is going to save the franchise to give him the best shot possible of being successful, because there's the physical element of it, there's the mental element, and then there's like 50 million other things that have to happen in order to be a good quarterback. We're talking, rote footwork, obviously play call, things like that. Comprehensive understanding of NFL defenses. This shit is impossible to learn. I mean, you have to be the offensive coordinator on the field, and they're tossing guys in from offenses that run 7 plays, all of which have one name at the college level, with offensive lines that aren't even playing the same sport. It's basically 7-on-7. And you're throwing them in the NFL against guys like Vic Fangio and Brandon Staley, the shadow defensive coordinator. You're throwing them against Raheem Morris and just some of these defensive masterminds. You get a Robert Saleh defense coming at you as a rookie quarterback, and you're going from 0 to 100. You have driven around in a 20-year-old Honda Civic and have only been able to go 45 miles per hour your entire life. And now you are handed the keys to a stick Ferrari that can hit 200 on the street with the push of a pedal. That's so easy to push. And you're telling me these guys aren't going to crash it? Like, get the hell up out of here. I'd rather actually take the time to teach him how to use the car. Is going to be the car. I'd rather take the time to teach him how to use the goddamn car as opposed to buying him some piece of shit Thundercat or whatever the hell they call that Dodge car. This is a terrible metaphor, but you get what I'm saying.
Before we jump to our better segment, I want to play this one thing here. This also from Twitter, because a lot of people are asking for this. Gronk talking about the Niners with Kay Adams.
Debo Samuel.
Here we go. We'll make it a little bigger so you can see it.
Thank you.
Here you go. Gronk with Kay Adams, and we'll react.
Debo Samuel, he'll miss a couple of weeks with a calf injury. Some people, critics, if you will, they're saying that Purdy's only successful because of the guys that are around him and the system. How will he do without his stars, do you think?
I mean, that will definitely give us a test to see where Purdy is. I mean, you got Samuel going to be out. Christian McCaffrey's going to be out.
Who do they have this week?
But,
Let me look.
they got so many weapons. I don't know why they're not producing. Why are they not putting up points like the New Orleans Saints every single week, week in and week out? That's the problem with the 49ers last year as well, is that they dominated some games, and then some games they just didn't show up and they couldn't produce. They should be producing week in and week out, especially with offensive-minded coach Kyle Shanahan, and then with all the weapons that they have. They need that it guy. I feel like they got a lot of weapons, but they just don't have like an it guy to turn it up. Yeah, Ayuk, I mean, he's a great guy, but look, he was holding out
George
the whole
Kittle?
time. George Kittle, they're great
Four-time
players.
All-Pro?
But I'm talking,
What do you
need
mean?
an it guy, like an it guy.
Who's
Like Edelman was an it guy.
Are you telling
like the
me
guy
that
was
Kittle's not an it guy?
he's an it guy, but like I'm talking like when it comes to crunch time, it's hey, feed me that ball. I feel like they're great playmakers, and they all rely on the other one to make the play because there's so many great weapons. You know what I mean? When you have so many great players around you, you rely, oh, he's going to make the play. That guy's going to make the play. But when you don't have so many, like when Edelman was out there for
but Brady made
or myself out there, it's give me that ball, feed me the ball.
Edelman missed a lot of time, and you missed a lot of time, and Brady made it guys out of Chris Hogan.
Brady was an it guy.
No disrespect to Hogan,
and
but
Hogan was kind of an it guy too. He had that mentality of feed me the ball, I want it, I'm going to do whatever.
It's mentality,
whatever it takes. It's mentality, and I feel like Trent Williams has that mentality.
Yeah.
He will go out there and he tosses people around. That's what you want, and he's doing it 24/7.
Are you calling out the grittiness of this team? What are you doing,
just
Rob?
that mentality. I mean, they should be dominating.
Yeah,
they should be. No matter who's on the field or whoever's down, they have so many replacement players as well. Their roster's stacked.
Debo Samuel.
What do you think? What do you think? I mean I'll say this. I mean, Gronk's been there and done it.
Yeah,
so
no
it's
doubt.
like you.
It sounds like he's maybe been there a little too long and done it a little too hard. That's what it sounds like.
Well, I mean, he says that they've got great weapons, but he basically is saying they're underachieving.
Okay.
And they don't have the it guy. And for an offense that has all these weapons, they sure don't score in the 30s every week.
What are you talking about? They had the best offense in the NFL last year, bar none.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
But I mean, they just scored 19 points against the Vikings.
I'm not arguing that last week wasn't. maybe they were without their it guy in Christian McCaffrey.
Well, do you think that Debo?
I think Debo Samuel's an it guy. How about we?
I know they all see themselves as it guys, but do you really think
they're all getting paid
right?
like it guys? I think Gronk is walked himself into a hole of his own making, trying to sound smart for a second, and got his ass owned. Doesn't have an it guy. Let's just think back to kind of a big game. Let's call it the NFC Championship game 2023, and the 49ers are getting their ass kicked in the first half, right? What do they do coming out in the second half? They throw the ball in a deep dig to Debo Samuel, who's battling some injury. We don't know what the hell, shoulder. And he gets the ball, and he gets blasted, absolutely blasted. And he gets up, and he starts pounding his chest so goddamn hard. I thought he was going to break his other shoulder, yelling, give me the ball, give me the ball. Give me the fucking ball. And then they kept giving him the ball. If that's not an it guy, I don't know what is. I watched the 2021 NFL season for the San Francisco 49ers. Debo Samuel from game 7 on put on the singular greatest individual offensive performance I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. If that's not an it guy, I don't know who the hell an it guy is. Julian Edelman's a wonderful player, and that's the guy you go to on third down. Well, no question about it. Debo Samuel.
I understand what he's saying as far as Julian Edelman. Do the Niners have that guy on offense that's like, you know what? This is, I mean, like, give you an example. The other day, whoever the Bleacher Report girl was who was doing the Debo show, I forget her. I don't know who she is.
I watched 5 minutes of it. It's brutal.
It was brutal. But she basically asked them about winning the Super Bowl, and they're just like, kind of like, hey, you know, you all you can do is do the best you can. It's like Debo's kind of like, seems kind of almost like 3 or 4 steps removed from the whole thing. Like, he doesn't seem like, hell, if we're going to be, you know, come up short, you know, we're not coming up short on my watch. No, he's not. No. He's not like that. He's like, hey, man, he's like too cool for school, kind of like a, hey, you know, we're going to do the best we can do. And if it's good enough, great. And if it's not, oh, well, you know, and Ayuk's kind of in that mode too, where it's like, well, Ayuk, hey, we're going to do what we can do. But, you know, if we can't do it, we can't do it. I mean,
It's
I don't know. I
September
mean,
18th. I mean, I do want to provide some deference to these guys on the Super Bowl. What the fuck are we talking about? The Super Bowl. We just lost to the Minnesota Vikings in week 2, and we're down our 2 best offensive players. Maybe we pump the brakes a bit on Super Bowl talk just so that we don't get out ahead of our skis. Listen,
well, that's funny you would say that, Dieter, because this is the exact same week that Debo says we've been the best team in football for the last 3 years. Well, dude, you can't say you're the best team in football.
Well,
that's like, that's
the
like
NFC.
Who was it? Who was the guy who said, wasn't it? Who was the bozo in the NBA who said, I feel like I've won a championship. Remember that guy? It was like I forget what he said. It was like something along the lines of like,
was it Paul George? Was it Charles Barkley?
No. You don't remember the guy this year who was like, I'm a champion already in my own mind. Maybe it was Dwight Howard.
Oh, well,
Dwight Howard has talked about how
special.
he's a champion.
I mean, good for him. Whatever you got to tell yourself. I didn't see that. I try not to listen to what Dwight Howard has to say.
My whole thing is just that, I agree. We're going to find out without Debo, without CMC, with the cast around Purdy diminished. We're going to find out how much of the Niners' success has been him and how much has it been these weapons. Because we're going to find out. Can he win games? He couldn't beat the Vikings in Minnesota, but Can he win games with the weapons he has? Something tells me he's going to be able to win games with the weapons he's got.
And just to remind, I mean, if you don't have it, guys, I know that advanced numbers, but they were the NFL's leading offense last year in scoring. They had a laughable margin on any other team when it came to the advanced metrics. They're operating their own quadrant in the advanced metric charts from last year's offense. They had 2 guys in the top 5 of MVP voting last year. The idea that they don't have a guy is just ludicrous to me. In fact, their problem might be that they have too many guys and that there isn't maybe one singular guy who separates himself from all of them.
I think it's Brock. I think Brock's their it guy because look at the playoffs. In that second half, it was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to need to run here. I'm going to have to make this happen, and he made it happen. So
I think he might be quarterback. You're not going to the Super Bowl anyway, unless you're the 2019 49ers. So I can appreciate some of the stuff that Gronk says. I think that was an example of a take that probably should have been cut off, and then he just kept digging the hole.
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't know anything about that.
All I would say is that I know what he's saying about the resolve and the commitment and the what it calls stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, of Julian Edelman. I mean, Julian Edelman's not the best receiver ever of all time, but you know what? He had a tremendous will. His will is in football is similar to that of Draymond Green in basketball. I mean, he just had tremendous will. You can feel
about Draymond here, but yeah,
you can feel the will of the guys who won it. You could feel the will of Emmitt Smith in the 90s. You could feel the will of Steve Young at times, and I can. To me, I think you can feel the will of both McCaffrey and Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy just seems like the kind of guy who's like, hey, man.
Debo, Kittle. Let's talk about will with George Kittle, right? Yeah, I go back to one of the great NFL regular season games. They're throwing the ball on, what was it? It was 4th down in New Orleans. And it's just this shootout that was just wild back and forth. And George Kittle gets the ball, should just run out of bounds. You did your job, buddy. And he just decides, I'm taking this whole team the other direction with me. You want to talk about will? That guy is in there blocking every snap like he's the right tackle. And he's dragging folks. He played with a bad shoulder his entire damn career. Like, I have now, I am not in a position like Gronk, who is an all-time Warrior, a Hall of Fame player, and understands the level of insanity required to play in the NFL. I can never possibly understand that. I've never been in the line of fire in that way. It's not for me to say. I have a hard time calling out the desire on anybody who's willing to step inside those lines because I know the inherent dangers of playing football at that level.
Well, I don't think anybody's questioning people's desire. I think it just saying that there are guys who want it and they will die for it. And there's something to be said for that. And a guy like Julian Edelman's one of those guys.
And I think Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, and I think that the Niners have ample amounts of those guys. Fred Warner.
I don't know if I agree. I don't know if I agree with that, because I don't know that I see anybody that has the Julian Edelman kind of. We haven't seen that kind of. I mean, Edelman's lacks talent, lacks athletic ability, but why do we have to? He was an MVP of the Super Bowl.
Why do we have to grade? Well, Juwan Jennings was nearly the MVP of the Super Bowl. I mean, why do we have to grade on the curve when we're dealing with a guy like, Edelman didn't have the talent, he's just a gritty white kid, and so therefore he must have had all this desire. But these guys who are more physically talented, they're less desire. They have less desire. They have less heart because they're more physically talented.
Well, I didn't say they have less heart. I didn't say they have less heart. I'm just saying that Edelman made some amazing plays,
no doubt about it,
and won a Super Bowl MVP and got apps and literally, you just heard Deebo say it in his own words. I mean, he just said it. He's like, hey, man, we're going to do the best we can do. And if we win, we win. And if we don't, we don't. I mean, that's not what Julian Edelman's saying.
I don't give a shit what they say on a Tuesday. I give a shit what they do on Sunday. And if you have any question about Deebo Samuel's commitment to this gig and his desire to win football games, first snap, second half, NFC Championship game, tell me that guy doesn't want it. Tell me
he wants. It's not about wanting it. It's about I'm talking about a guy like Julian Edelman is. I think he proved with the way he played. I mean, Deebo Samuel was the MVP of at halftime of Super Bowl 54. I mean, he barely even touched the ball in the second half. Sure. Is that on him? Is that on Shanahan? I don't know who it's on, but that's what happened. Edelman won a Super Bowl MVP, and he's not very good. I mean, he was never a top 10 NFL receiver, but somehow he elevated in the playoffs. I'm not saying that those guys don't care. I'm just saying some guys would rather win. Some guys want to win. Other guys live to win. And to me, Julian Edelman's a guy that he lives to win, and that level of competitive fire is unique. It's rare. It's not with everybody, and it's not an insult to say that other people don't have that.
And that's fair. But I'll say this: that Tom Brady's greatness was directly derived from that. He was obsessed with that level of success. It had to be perfect. It had to be otherworldly. Just simply winning wasn't enough. He had to destroy. And it was, this pathos that was set deep in stone back from Sarah High School or whatever, happened at Michigan. I'm the seventh stringer. And just he was able to manifest all of that into his play week in and week out. And he was out for blood. They built the team around that. And if you think, as I do, that Brock Purdy has the same sort of thing going on, different origin story to a degree, but in many ways similar, then they'll build the team around that. And ultimately, the accountability comes from the star of the team. You have to match the energy levels. You have to match the standards of the star of the team. And Brock Purdy, I don't think, will put up with anything less than that level of crazed. Now, maybe times have changed and everyone's a little bit cooler with everything now. I'm not sure. But if Brock Purdy's really that guy, it will be wildly evident in how this team plays for years to come, because it's a head coach in a quarterback league, and it doesn't matter who's around Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. They seem to always get the best out of their guys. It doesn't matter who's around, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They always had that identity. Peyton Manning can go to two different teams. Somehow they end up looking the exact same. How's that work? Kind of weird. There is something about the level of leadership. So the idea, ultimately we're getting into a semantical argument about the guy and heart and desire and all these things. It's about the quarterback. It's about the guy who sets the tone for the building and how you go about your business. And if the head coach and the quarterback are on the same page and they're maniacal about victory and they accept nothing less, and they're not corny about it like maybe a John Gruden would have been. Like if they're really about this and they're willing to go every extra inch, foot, yard, mile to get it done, that will permeate every inch of that building, and anyone who's not up to that standard won't be around very long. So I have to give the Niners the benefit of the doubt on this. The fact of the matter is they've been to 4 NFC championship games in 5 years. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. Had they won one, I don't think anyone would be asking these questions. They haven't, so they are, and they should. But ultimately, it's not as if this is some startup and we don't know what they're made of yet. It's just a team that hasn't gotten that final step over the line. But being there consistently in a position to make it happen year in and year out has to stand for something. And I think it stands for a whole lot. I think they got plenty of dogs, or whatever the hell you want to call it, on this team.
This live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. All right, we will take a look at our Better lineup right here. Once again, let's take a look. We've got our once again, download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. All right, let's take a look at the Niners-Rams matchup and some of the options.
What a mess of a game this is, by the way.
Let's see.
Will the Rams even be able to field a football team for this contest?
There's Niners. Okay, let's go to Purdy. Let's go to Purdy for a start there with Brock. And you can go with 225 passing yards, more or less.
Oh, like that.
Half an interception, more or less. 8.5 rushing yards, more or less. 36.5 passing yards, more or less.
That's the longest pass, yeah.
Longest pass. I would say I like the rushing yards. I think he's good for a 10, just one run. 1 or 2 runs for 10, 12 yards. I think he's totally cognizant of the fact that, what Steve Young has been saying, which is, the NFL defenses, they will give you yards with your feet. You have to take them if you're really going to be at that highest level. I think Brock believes in that. So I'll say more than 8.5 rushing yards. I say he runs for 9 yards or more. So there's one.
I like over on passing yards, to be honest. I mean, even when we're talking about a team that blitzed him 51% of the time, 23 of 45 dropbacks last week, no time to operate, constantly rushed, still 114 yards on 17 throws against the blitz. It was still quantifiably good. So I'm looking at a Rams.
You like passing yards in this Rams game? Because I think the Rams have given up almost 6 yards a carry in 2 games.
I think they're going to give up yards in every direction. I don't know how they stop the other team from getting yards. I mean, it wasn't just, they're giving up a lot of stuff in the run game. That's going to open up more for the passing game. 225 is not a very high number. I think Brock is getting graded by the rest of the league right now, which can't seem to complete a pass because you don't have guys who understand offenses, running quarterback, and just trying for the big play. I think over 225.5.
Okay, let's go with that.
It's a lock or anything, but it feels pretty good.
We'll go with that. How about Mason? Let's go to Mason. He's got some projections here, 6 different projections on Mason. 89.5 rushing yards. He's never had under 100. 104.5 rushing and receiving yards. That's kind of dangerous because he doesn't catch. 11.5 receiving yards. 17.5 longest run. 8.5 longest catch. I think I just like over 89.5. I think over 89.5 rushing yards for Mason is a freaking lock. That is the lock of locks. The Rams are awful against the run. The Niners don't have a full complement of weapons. This kid's healthy. He's going to get the ball 20 times. I like Mason to go for 120.
I mean, I like where your head's at. I'm not saying you're wrong. 89.5 is a little rich of a number. You miss a couple of series because somebody hits you in the knee, and now suddenly 89.9 ain't there. And it's not because you had a bad game. It's just because you couldn't play the entire series. And I know that the Niners don't want to go to Isaac Guerrero, but they might have to. I would do 17.5 longest rush if I were to say anything.
We can do that. Let's go 17.5, more than 17.5 on the longest run.
He had a couple that he broke off last week against a Minnesota defense that did a really good job. They was just so sound. Like, they were really impressive. And I know that we've gone in on the Niners a lot, but
let's go to Ayuk here. Let's go to Ayuk because Ayuk was holding court at his locker today, And there were an
Is that
awful
what
lot
you
of
call-
people who were like, you know what? You're going to step up. And it's 65.5 receiving yards, 23.5 longest catch.
Mm.
I think it's gonna be a run heavy game.
Okay.
But I think Ayuk, this is the game where he gets like 80 yards. Something like that. That's how
I'd go with the longer catch on this one. But yeah, I can get behind.
You like
Brandon
the
Ayuk.
the 20 you think he's gonna have a 24-yard reception?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with that.
I think Tre'Davious White, once a brilliant corner, is no longer that. And I saw Marvin Harrison just cook his ass for 4 straight quarters. And Marvin Harrison still doesn't have any idea what he's doing yet. Marvin Harrison had 4 catches for like 120 yards. He got the Brandon Ayuk contract of a game, 4 for 120, but 2 tutties. I think that Ayuk gets a slant over the middle, and suddenly, the Rams don't understand. Like, should we tackle them? Like, they're a mess, man. And I have so much respect for the Rams. They're just such a mess. It's really
they're in a bad way right now. All right, are we good? Let's go there. We'll go one more. Let's go with this Whittington kid.
Yeah, I like Whittington. Texas, good player.
Let's see what his projection is.
Ooh,
32.5 receiving yards. I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
Let's go away from him. Let's go to Verse.
Okay.
Jared Verse.
I see it. I see the potential. Oh boy.
5.5 tackles and assists. Ooh,
What did he have last week?
That's kind of high. That's high.
He had 7 tackles last week.
Yeah.
I think we stay away from it. That's
what up, Moody? What's Moody's projection?
Now we're talking. It's the year of the kicker, Larry.
Yeah, he's looked pretty good. Moody's.
You have to choose one Ram. You have to choose one Ram.
Oh, we do now.
Okay, so
what about Kyron Williams? What about a kick return? Yeah,
I heard a voice.
The voice
So
of God.
The voice of God. All right, why don't
Kyron Williams rushing
against
Kyron?
Yeah, let's go Kyron. He's got 6 different projections here.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think? Which one do you like?
Let's go over on the 63.5 rushing yards.
Okay. I like that too.
I have not liked what I've seen from the Niners in the run game, which is, the same story as last year.
I like that. So so now we have a full contingent of picks. Let's take a look at our picks. We've got Purdy more than 225.5 passing yards.
Yep.
Mason more than a 17.5 for a longest run. So he's got to have an 18-yard run. Brandon Ayuk's got to have a 24-yard catch. Mm-hmm. Kyron Williams has got to have 64 yards rushing.
We're talking big plays. Big
Yeah,
plays, Larry. That's the kind of
what
game
are we looking at? Okay, so we're gonna wager here. Let's go 10.
10 spots.
Let's go 10. And we'll win 100 off that. I like that.
Hey, now.
We add our entry. And once again, this live stream is sponsored by Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Use Better to make daily fantasy lineups and win real money. Kevin, I turned $10 into 90 in the Niner Raider game on a 4-prop deal. Download the app below. Make sure you use the promo code Niners to get your first deposit matched up to $200. And thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. And good luck to you guys. I'm a big fan of Better, and sign up. Sign up right now. Make sure you download the app. Make sure you use that promo code Niners, Niners, to get your first deposit matched up to $200. And thanks to Better for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, couple more before we jet. Talanoa Hufanga returning to the secondary this weekend. Mm-hmm. This secondary had a communication breakdown on the Jalen Naylor touchdown. They had a communication breakdown on the Powell catch on 3rd and 7 that went for 11. Mm-hmm. Those 2 communication breakdowns really, really were costly. Yeah. Hufanga is coming back on Saturday unless something goes wrong between now and then. And when Shanahan was asked about Hufanga and his strength, and he said he's a great communicator. Man, this secondary needs a great communicator. How is Hufanga going to play on Sunday?
I think it's a nice game to come into when you don't have to deal with Cooper Kupp and you don't have to deal with Puka Nacua, where you're dealing with the Rams offense that is going to go with tight splits because that's how they go about their business and don't have the receivers that can really stretch the field. So I think this is a great situation for him to come back into. I'm curious as to how they integrate him because the Niners haven't fully done the cover 3 thing that I thought that they might, right? It's still been some too high, and you're going to mix and match. It's the modern NFL. Don't get me wrong, but Talanoa Hufanga is a strong safety. Talanoa Hufanga is best when he's playing strong side linebacker in effect in a nickel package. And when he's close to the line of scrimmage in the box, he can make stuff happen because he can move around. He's like a second Fred Warner out there, a little smaller, certainly less talented, but his coverage ability is not as he's not as susceptible in coverage when he's in the mix and making stuff happen. And he's got a great football instinct. He's a playmaker. I don't like him in space. This is a good game because I don't expect him to be in space all that often. And ultimately, the communication line is perfect because the safety situation has been a disaster. A disaster. You didn't even mention the big play of the game, which is for some reason, Nick Sorensen has George Odom defending Justin Jefferson one-on-one. I don't care what yard line you're at. You're getting burned. You're getting burned. Oh, and by the way, your one safety who's still back is standing flat-footed by the time Justin Jefferson runs past him.
Yeah, I mean, when also he didn't even turn to run until a guy who's way faster than him was already even. If you're gonna have success, you got to run. You got to. I mean, if you run 4.6 and he runs 4.4, you've got to get going before he's even with you.
That's right. You have to see it happening and get there beforehand. You don't have to be the fastest player, but you do need to be the sharper player in those situations, especially when you're a single high safety in a cover 3 system. You're the last line of defense, and ultimately you're making a decision one side of the field or the other. You have to be incisive, but you also have to be correct. And what makes the great cover 3 safeties, the free safeties, the guys that we talk about as Hall of Famers, we're talking Ed Reed, we're talking Earl Thomas, they were so incisive, they understood the plays before they even happened. And Ed Reed was playing mind games with quarterbacks, and Earl Thomas was playing mind games with quarterbacks. And right now, offensive coordinators are pointing directly at Jair Brown and saying, we're taking advantage of this guy until he proves otherwise. And I'm a big Jair Brown fan talent-wise. I'm a big Jair Brown fan in terms of, how he thinks about the game and his accountability and all these things. Like, I think he has a chance. But as of right now, he's getting his ass kicked. And if Talanoa Hufanga can help him, then that's awesome. I don't know if that's the case or not. Ultimately, I do think it's on the player himself, but maybe having Huff out there, somebody who just sees the game well, has an instinct for the game, can predict plays as they're happening at a high level, which is how a guy who doesn't have all these athletic positive traits is able to make plays at the NFL level. Maybe that can really help out a Jair Brown, take a little bit of the load off him, allow him to play a little more freely, also some more defined roles. But man, it's been really, really rough to watch. So even with all of my reservations on Hufanga as the player, let's give it a shshot here.
They have no speed at safety. Hufanga is a 4.7 guy. Jair Brown's a 4.6 guy. Odom's a special teamer.
Yeah.
Mustafa's more of a hitter than a runner.
That's right.
I don't see speed at safety. I see a lack of speed. In fact, that was my next question. The Niners on Monday worked out 3 slot corners. And my read on it is that, okay, the slot corner for the Niners is Demo Lenore. Right. Renardo Green's the backup slot corner, nickel corner, slot corner, whatever you want to call it. They love Lenore. I mean, and he's having a great year.
Right.
And what they've been doing is they've been playing Yadam outside, opposite Mooney at the right corner spot, and Lenore in the nickel. But if they're looking at 3 nickels, 3 slot corners, it either means they're going to move Lenore outside and go, with Renardo Green as the nickel, or they're going to move Renardo Green outside and keep Lenore as the nickel, take Yadam off the field, and they're going to sign one of these slot corners to be what essentially Renardo Green is right now, which is the backup slot corner to Demo Lenore. So
Yeah.
What do you make? What do you make of the fact that they worked out 3 nickel corners? Are they? I know Yadam had two fumble recoveries that were huge, but even despite those plays, was his coverage so bad that they are going to replace him with Renardo Green? I'm getting that idea that it's like one of those things that I think is going to happen this week, and I think nobody's going to talk anything about it till game time because I don't think they're going to say anything about it.
I think you're right. It's really interesting that they're working out some guys in the slot because that should be a position of strength. The fact that they have maintained this year the Demo outside to inside thing tells me that they're not interested in him being a full-time nickel. And by the way, this team still wants to play a lot of base, which I don't think they need to do when you have Diamador Lenore on the field, but that's just me. Clearly, they're not all the way in on Renardo Green at either spot because they're working out some guys.
That was my. I'm not sure if that's right though. Maybe they're looking at Renardo as the starter moving up, and they're looking for backup nickels.
I just think it's a little early to give up on Yadam. I thought Yadam was wonderful in camp, and I think that you have to tip your hat to Kevin O'Connell for how he schemed it up because you had Yadam on the outside, and then they would motion the outside receiver to the inside, and then he got Yadam in the blender because now he's having to play as a slot. And I thought they did a really nice job of putting him in conflict, right? That's the inherent action of any Kubiak Shanahan style offense. You're trying to put players in conflict. And I thought they did a really nice job of that with Yadam, to where not only would they sometimes bring him inside, then they'd run it at him. No pun intended. I guess it's not a pun. It's a rhyme. Pardon the rhyme. They'd run it right at Yadam. And that is a problem. I don't think Renardo Green fixes that problem. And I don't think that Diamador Lenore really fixes that problem either, as we saw in the game against the Jets in week 1. So I
think they're going to replace Yadam outside with Green. And I think that they're going to replace Green as the backup with whatever guy they signed.
Yeah, I think that's the right prediction. I'm not. I'm a little bit stunned that that's happening right now. That feels premature.
But they sure did get toasted, and there was an awful lot of. There was an awful. I mean, they could not stop Sam Darnold in this passing attack from converting on third downs in the fourth quarter when they have no Jordan Addison, no Jefferson, no TJ Hawkinson. Right. No, I mean, Jones wasn't 100%. I mean, they literally were gutted, and their backups were taking it to the Niners. And maybe that was enough for the Niners to sit there and go, hey, you know what? We're going to make changes. We're going to get our best guys in the field. Tomorrow's interview with Sorensen is going to be very interesting.
Yes,
very interesting, I think. Yeah. What's your Niners number one? A couple more before we say goodbye. Niners number one concern. Some people would say it's Shanahan. Other people would say it's Purdy. Injuries, O-line, Devondre Campbell, the lack of separation for the receivers, the defensive tackle combo, the depth at defensive end, the safeties who can't cover. What do you view as the number one concern?
I mean, Larry, look at me. What do you think I'm going to say? It's the offensive line, Larry. The issue is the offensive line.
Okay.
They can't pass protect. And what they're asking Brock Purdy to do when you
Who's the issue, though? Who's the issue of the 5 guys?
Okay, let's just start interior. Let's start with Brendel. Brendel, I can count on one hand the good pass pro sets that he's given so far this season. Harrison Phillips threw him to the ground, straight onto his ass with one arm. I mean, I think Harrison Phillips is a wonderful player, don't get me wrong, but there's no anchor. And we talked about this in the preseason, Larry. He wasn't snapping the ball well. He was rolling the ball to Brock in practices out of shotgun. And so you go, well, why the hell is that happening? You talk to a couple of people and they go, well, it's because he doesn't trust himself to get into position to anchor in pass pro. So he's rushing through the snap. He's coming out of his stance too soon. Well, why is he doing that? Because again, he doesn't trust his legs. Now, I'll give Brendel this. He's done a nice job of getting the ball to Brock. He hasn't rolled a snap yet. He has prioritized the snap. And we're seeing the flip side of what that is. There's a reason that he was afraid because he is getting owned again and again and again. Feliciano's injured. I don't know what the deal is with that, but
I like Nugent. I like Zakel.
They're going to play Zakel.
I'll be honest. I know Brendel's smart, and I know a lot of people like Brendel. I know he was a Pro Bowl alternate a couple years ago. I don't see it, man. I don't see it.
He is still a very good run blocker. He does deserve credit for that, and that is ultimately the Niners' priority when it comes to that position. It always has been, right? They have not gotten center right for more than 3 or 4 games at a time since Kyle Shanahan's been here. They have never had it all together. There were maybe a couple games with Weston Richburg where you go, oh wow, I really see it. And then even Ben Garland had a couple of games where you're like, oh yeah, I really see it. Alex Mack certainly did, but ultimately injuries or just inherent father time got all of them. And it has been really, really rough to watch Brendel. And not only is he getting blown up in pass pro again and again and again, with, by the way, a 6'1" quarterback, now you have guys just lining up on the nose. They're running bear fronts against this dude so that they can just come right up the middle. It's untenable. And I'm not saying that Zakelj is going to be any better in pass pro, and I'm certainly not saying that the Nuge, who has anchoring issues himself, is going to be any better. But at a certain point, you kind of know what's what. And it's a veteran player, and it's getting worse as opposed to better. So he gets another game, and if he can't stop Hecht, if he can't stop it's not like Aaron Donald's lining up on his nose. You got substandard guys comparatively to what the Rams used to have. And I like a couple of their defensive linemen, don't get me wrong, but you're Fisk. You're not dealing with the greatest of all time, perhaps.
Watch this. This is Brendel against Kinlaw.
Yeah, he got stood up. Yeah. Jake Brendel has been on his ass more than Brandon Pajemski.
What's the opposite of anchor?
Right.
My
you
goodness.
got that going on. Can I mention some other things? You see Banks on that play just blocking his right guard's ass. That's a fun little note. What are you doing there? So then, offensive line play is very hard. Inherently, you have to.
Here we go. Here's another one. I'm going to show you.
Everyone's got this one.
Out where he slides through.
This is my man, John Chapman, who does a nice job here. Listen to Chapman for just a second. We'll give Chapman some love here. 49er rush. Here he is breaking down Brendel.
George Kittle's trying to do a leak route where he slides through. Jake Brendel stops him from doing it. Brendel touches nobody but 2 49ers players. They'll just turn around watching, man. Jake Brendel is awful.
Yeah.
I'll block you. I don't want Kittle to go out on a route. Literally touched no player. Right here, hit this A or B gap. What are we doing here? Boom. Trent got it. Stay on it. Banks, terrible. Brendel's just the weakest dude I've ever seen play in the NFL at the line position. He just gets tossed, man.
Again with the
he gets too gapped. All you got to do is just stay between him and the ball carrier. Just tosses him aside.
By the way, if anyone was wondering who John Feliciano was talking about when he decided to just go thermonuclear on Twitter, I think we have our answer now. But no one's arguing that Brendel had a good game. It's been a bad game. It's been back-to-back bad games. He's not the only issue on the line. Pooney was awful.
He was the lowest graded guy this week, Pooney.
And there's going to be, he's a rookie.
Yeah.
You give him
and there's going to be
the
bumps in the road, man.
And I thought Banks was bad. Trent had a glove on today. I don't know if there's something up with his hand. He wouldn't talk to me about it. But he had on some Michael Jackson glove thing going on.
So you're saying the O-line, but you're going O-line.
Yeah, it's the O-line.
I'm going to go defensive tackle.
It ain't good.
Dieter, we have 4 cars because we got a bunch of teenage drivers and stuff. And I drive my Tahoe, old Chevy Tahoe, which I bought for my wife when my kids were born.
Yeah.
And it just keeps running. I love it. Anyway, I drive the Tahoe quite a bit.
I saw it. It's got that
duct tape. What's that?
It's got the duct tape on the rear view window or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, we've duct taped quite a bit of.
Hey, listen, I got an 07 Honda. I don't think there's a piece of rubber that hasn't degraded on it yet.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised what my wife can hit going in and out of out of the garage. She's taken, if you could see you think the car looks bad, wait until you see the house.
Yeah. Right.
The house is the
I know
garage
the
has
feeling.
been taken down by the Tahoe. But I could park my Tahoe between Sam Darnold and Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have parked it there, literally right there, and I don't think Hargrave or Collins would have ever dented the front of that car. They never would have gotten there. I could have parked it literally, I could have parked it vertically from in front of Sam Darnold, and they seriously never would have run into it.
Can you use
Those
that car
guys
as the
should
offensive
have
line?
dominated, and they didn't dominate. And not only did they not dominate, I thought they got dominated. I didn't see. I'm so disappointed in what I've seen out of Javon Hargrave. I
thought
can't
he was
even.
fine in game one. I really did.
No. In game one, I thought he was fine too. He looked like I thought he was going to have a whole redone year, a whole new and improved Javon Hargrave.
He had
but
no
this
explosion
game
against the
was
Vikings.
nothing.
He was embarrassing.
Brandel and Ingram and Bradbury, they should have owned those guys.
Yep.
And they didn't. I don't have the box in front of me, but let me take a look. I don't think either of those guys did anything.
I'll pull it up.
Did those guys do anything at all? I didn't see
tackles.
I didn't see a sack. I didn't see a pressure. I didn't see a hit on the quarterback. I didn't. Those guys. I didn't see.
Collins had 4 tackles, nothing on the quarterback, and oh boy, Hargrave 2 assisted tackles and nothing on the quarterback. That's no bueno. That ain't good.
So to me, it's the defensive tackles because I expected them in this game to dominate, and they should have dominated, and they didn't. All right, let's talk about running back for a second.
Yeah.
The Niners, they were asked today by a couple people, hey, any roster announcements? And they're like, no, not today, but we do expect one this week. I would expect that it's going to be either running back or a receiver, probably a running back. CMC's out, and they're getting a little thin. I did talk to Keyshawn Vaughn in the locker room today, and I like Keyshawn Vaughn's potential. He was a really good player at Vandy once upon a time. But I'm going to give you some trade options and some free agent options. Okay. And I'll just say the name, and you just say yes or no. Yes meaning you have some interest, no meaning you have none.
Now, Larry, knowing you, there's going to be 2 guys on this that I don't even know who they are. So let me get into the right state of mind.
These are going to be veteran. This is not practice squad guys. These are veteran free agents and guys you can trade for. You will have heard of all of them.
Draft binder. Here's every player in the NFL.
Okay, here we go. Latavius Murray, yes or no?
No, washed.
Boston Scott, yes or no?
No, slow.
Jerick McKinnon, yes or no?
Yes. Probably won't work out, but yeah. Okay. Knows the offense, good pass catcher out of the backfield. Don't know if he's got it in him. If he's got it in him, hell yeah.
Matt Breida, yes or no?
No, you better off with Keyshawn Vaughn.
Leonard Fournette, yes or no?
No, slow.
Those are the free agent options. Kareem Hunt is a Kansas City Chief, so he no longer is an option.
That's right.
Now let's go to the trade options.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows? Well, obviously, in trade options, it's what's the price, right?
Yeah.
But
let's just
say they're reasonable priced because none of these guys are going to be that expensive.
I get it.
Miles Sanders, Carolina.
No, Miles Sanders hasn't been the same guy for a while now.
Yeah, I agree. Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert in Miami.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Mostert. I do Mostert. I trade for Mostert.
Is it possible that the Niners could trade a Dobbs for a running back? Would you do that?
That'd be a hell of a deal for the Niners.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of these teams that need quarterbacks now.
I mean, I would toss a late pick for a currently injured Raheem Mostert. I mean, not exactly helping you for the Rams game, but Raheem Mostert led the NFL in touchdowns last year. And clearly Achane is the number 1 guy there, as he should be. They just drafted a kid right. They do have Jeff Wilson, who, for some reason, Jeff Wilson's still on the team. He never seems to do anything right when he's on the field, but Mike McDaniel just wants to keep him around because he's like a trusted veteran. It doesn't make any sense.
Like
the veterans,
I
like Jeff Wilson too, but the veteran is supposed to be the guy who at least does everything right. He just doesn't have the skill. Jeff Wilson can't seem to do anything right.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
you probably get him for free.
What about this name? Filthy Casuals is Frank Gore's kid.
Filthy Casuals.
No,
I mean, no. I didn't
How about
like
this
him.
one?
I didn't like him coming out of Southern Miss. Now, yeah, obviously.
Melaniac trade a first rounder for Cody Schrader.
What do you think? What do you think I'm going to say? What do you think I'm going to say? I say trade multiple. Give him the Trey Lance deal. Listen, as much as I joke about it, and as much as I think Cody Schrader's the man, it was pretty evident that he did not have the same skill set during a game as he did at practice. Sometimes it doesn't translate, and he looks slow against the NFL. And the difference between that and college is in college, you have a lot of guys who don't weigh 200 pounds who might be fast, and Cody Schrader could run their asses over. And in the NFL, everyone weighs 220 pounds minimum, it seems like. And they are running even faster. In Cody Schrader's skill set, he just reached the Peter principle. He got promoted to the point of incompetence. I can see why the Rams picked him up. I can get why, they always like a guy that I like. They always do. If it isn't Jake Funk, it's Cody Schrader. But ultimately, I don't think anyone should be saying that the Niners should regret giving up Cody Schrader, because it clearly didn't look to me, given the opportunities that he had, like he's actually going to cut it in the NFL. And I hope I am wrong about that, because I love Cody Schrader.
He's a practice squad guy, and the Rams, for whatever reason, put him on their active roster.
No.
So that, good for
the
them.
only way to get him.
I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have put him on I have no problem with the Niners not putting him on the active roster.
Right.
Okay. So now we got a couple more trade options.
Nice.
Chicago, Khalil Herbert or Roschon Johnson.
I like Khalil Herbert. I think that they could demand a pretty penny for Khalil Herbert at this point. I'm talking like still a day 2 pick. So yeah, third rounder. So
how about Najee Harris?
Is there any evidence that Najee Harris is good?
He's powerful. I'll give you the two names.
When I think the 49ers offense, I don't think about power.
Yeah, I think the two names that are the most intriguing to me would be the two guys in Cleveland. Pierre Strong, who is very, very straight line fast.
South Dakota State, go Jacks.
Yeah, and he runs a little upright, but he's very fast. And then Dante Foreman, who played at Texas and has got good size and speed.
Sounds like Foreman's taking Ford's job, though. I think Foreman got more than half the snaps last week. Everywhere Foreman goes, he gets it. And then
Foreman's good.
Last year with Chicago, he had that massive game. He shows up on a new team every year, and he has like one or two big games. He's like a modern day CJ Anderson. So
he's underrated, man. He's faster than you think.
Yes,
Dante Foreman is faster than you think. All right. Okay, now we're going to play a quick game called Worried Not Worried.
Oh boy.
Okay. And all you got to say, I don't want long answers. I just want worried, not worried. Okay.
Understood.
Here we go.
Got it.
Brandon Ayuk.
Worried.
Yeah. About?
It's going to take more than I thought he looked good this past week, but it's going to take him a lot longer to feel fully in the rhythm of the game. And that missing training camp, he missed those valuable reps, and ultimately they're not looking his way because they didn't look his way when they were installing the offense for a month. They were looking to an X receiver that didn't exist. And so the X receiver is not a priority anymore in this offense. I'm worried that now that the moment has come where the X receiver has to be the number one in this offense, as opposed to the Z with Deebo Samuel, he's not going to be, the chain isn't going to be well oiled enough on the bike for him to really go.
I'm worried that the Niners took away his motivation. He was motivated to get this big contract. He got the big contract. It's hard. It's hard to get motivated when you're happy. Leonard Floyd, worried, not worried.
I mean, I have to say worried, but can I also say I'm not at all surprised? I mean,
you've been down on Leonard Floyd.
It was abysmal. It was abysmal against Minnesota.
I'll give him credit. Out. It was like he wasn't there.
Well, Yetur Gross-Matos overtook him on the depth chart. It took one half of football. I mean, Larry, this is the exact same Leonard Floyd I saw last year in Buffalo. And I at least thought he'd give a couple of weeks of looking fresh before he fell off the face of the earth. He couldn't even give you a full game.
He looked good against the Jets, but he looked bad against the Vikings.
He looked good. He looked good in the first 3 quarters against the Jets. Now, how much does the fourth quarter matter? Who's to say? But he looked abysmal from the jump against the Vikings. I'd be very worried. I don't think he's going to get the majority of snaps this week. and I think I saw it coming.
I'll say not worried. I'm not. I think he'll bounce back. Javon Hargrave, worried, not worried.
Not worried. Not yet. It is a very binary thing. Worry implies some sort of in between. If it's gone, it's going to be all the way gone, and we're going to know by the end of this weekend if it's all the way gone. He looked awful against Minnesota. He didn't have any explosion.
Harry Balzac says, Larry, you were wrapping this up 30 minutes ago.
That's on me. That's always on me. And
first of all, we weren't wrapping it up. We will wrap it up when I say we'll wrap it up, and not a minute before. All right. All right. Here we go. So I'm worried about Hargrave because to me, he doesn't look the same. I mean, he also looks another guy that they took away his motivation. Devondre Campbell, worried or not worried?
Very worried. I saw Kevin O'Connell start targeting him in the second half of that game. And I think that there is a teach tape now out for the rest of the NFL on how to beat the San Francisco 49ers defense. And so you go at 27 and 59 in alternating order. And Campbell has enough to stay on the field, but not enough to help the 49ers win. It's kind of a paradoxical scenario. I'm very worried about it.
Yeah, I'm worried about Campbell. I don't think he's good enough. Jair Brown, worried, not worried?
I'm worried sick. I'm worried like a parent. I really like Jair.
About his coverage ability.
Yeah, it's been really, really bad, Larry. It's been.
No, he's not a cover guy. I've been trying to tell people he's a younger version of Tayshaun Gibson. He's good. He's great against the run, and he will pick an interception out of the sky, but he's not a coverage guy. I'm concerned about his coverage ability.
This team does not have a free safety right now.
I know. The Niners don't have a free safety. They don't have a safety who can cover. That is a major concern. I think they're going to have to rectify that before Sunday. Brock Purdy, worried, not worried?
Not worried.
Not worried. I agree. Trent Williams, worried, not worried?
Not worried.
Not worried. I agree. George Odom, worried, not worried?
Can't divide by zero. I mean, I'm worried, but he's not going to have a job come Sunday, so it doesn't matter.
I'm worried anytime he's playing from scrimmage. I'm not worried on special teams.
That's
Other
fair.
than that, that's how I feel.
By the way, he was part of the troika there that gave up the block punt. So maybe I should be even worried with him on special teams these days because he didn't look very good on that play.
Here's the ultimate one. Yeah. Worried or not worried, Nick Sorensen?
Not worried. Not worried.
Not worried.
I think that was a really Kevin O'Connell's as good as anybody in this league when it comes to drawing it up. And I include Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Andy Reid, and that guy. He is so goddamn good. And told you that last week. Couldn't have said it enough times in the week leading up. He's as good as it gets, man. He is so goddamn good. And Nick Sorensen is in his second game as an offensive coordinator, and he got taught a little bit about the NFL. It ain't going to happen every week. I think that team is organized. I think they have deficiencies, and I think that some tough decisions are going to have to be made here in the not-too-distant future if they haven't already been made. But I think Nick Sorensen did a very good job against the Jets. He deserves a lot of credit for that, and he got shown the ropes on how this thing actually goes, the next level in the NFL by Kevin O'Connell, but he won't be playing a Kevin O'Connell every week. And as much respect as I have for Sean McVay with that talent that they have there, it's not going to even look the same. You can be worried about him, though. I think there's ample reason to be worried if you want to. I'm just not.
Digital Drew. I'm worried about Larry when he gets off the stream. His wife is going to hit him with that Tahoe. Yeah, exactly.
Aren't you in the garage, Larry? Is the Tahoe there with you right now?
Yes, it is. It's very close by. Actually, we don't park the Tahoe in the garage.
Yeah.
I can. My wife parks her car in the garage.
Yes. Well.
Yeah, my car. I can walk. I can walk from the corner. Okay. We have one question here in the chat. This one, and Salvador Lopez has asked me a couple times here. Larry, could you explain why instead of giving a shot to the cornerbacks who've been on the practice squad, they're out looking for guys on the street that aren't in football shape, don't know the playbook, and trying to plug them in? Well, this is who they have on the practice squad, defensive back-wise. They have Tracy Walker. He's a safety.
Mm-hmm.
And they have, besides that, they have Jalen Mahoney. He's a safety. And they have Chase Lucas, who's a corner, but he's really more of a special teamer. Yep, and that's it. So they don't have anybody. They don't have any corners on the practice squad. And as far as corners go, I'm not worried about the playbook at all. No. I mean, it's like you're playing corner. You could playing corner. You're out there on the island. A lot of those things are transferable from team to team. All right, let's hit a couple of these. Samuel Rosario, Dieter, and Larry ripped Farhan. The man was in the hospital when he signed Matt Chapman. Give him a break.
I was aware that he was in the hospital, and I still ripped him.
Yeah,
so I can be a bad person, but tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, Farhan. It's time to go. It's time to go. Tony says, "Can you ask Kyle why he doesn't practice a 2-minute drill?" Yeah, that is kind of odd. The 49ers, if you watch the Niners from the 80s, Dieter,
yeah,
they did practice the hurry up. They did practice the 2-minute drill, and they were so much better at it. Joe Montana, I mean, I forgot how good Joe Montana was at running the 2-minute drill until the other day when I saw Niners Chiefs when Joe was going against Steve and they had that game on TV. And Joe did it at the end of the first half. He did it in the second half. He was just so good at working the sidelines. And one thing that the Niners did all the time that nobody does anymore. It's amazing, really. They would complete a pass inside on, let's say, the 2-minute offense. And then they would sprint to the line of scrimmage and down the ball.
Yeah.
Every time they got a first down, they would sprint to the line of scrimmage and down the ball. I saw Mahomes the other day. They had a long pass play. He didn't down the ball. He wasted like 45 seconds between or some ridiculous amount of time between plays. It's like that was where Joe was amazing. He always could find Mike Wilson or Dwight Clark or Freddie Solomon along the sideline. He was a master at the 2-minute drill, knowing when to call timeouts, when to spike the ball, how to do everything, hand the ball to the umpire, all the different things that you have to do to save seconds. Walsh had them go through it routinely, and they were really good at it. And it seems like when the Niners go any kind of tempo, it's just mistake filled and penalty filled, and it seems like they always shoot themselves in the leg.
I mean, they do practice it. They practice it every day.
A 2-minute drill, a hurry up. I don't know. Do they practice a hurry up?
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. They practice get to the line, spike it, whatever. It's period 13 to 14.
Oh,
if they do red zone,
we haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, I don't know what they do during the week, and then the notion that they might not practice something during the week. Well, they get a lot less time than Joe and Bill had back when they were in the day. So
no doubt. 49 throwback. We are the best team in the NFL. Debo, Jake Brendel hasn't been good. The return of Talanoa Hufanga is going to be huge. Brock Purdy will bounce back. I like the positivity there. Blood Moon says Grant saying the league has figured Brock Purdy out. Why is the guy always super ready to announce Brock Purdy as Jimmy 2.0? The doom and gloom gets old. Brock Purdy hate should be studied. I don't know. I can't answer.
I will say there were some Jimmy-esque elements to that game in week 2.
Yeah, no question.
It was very.
That was the first time because Jimmy froze under pressure, and there was a couple spots where Brock should have gotten rid of the football, and he just didn't. He just held on to the football, and that's just not
a lot
good.
of over the middle stuff, forcing it into tight windows,
late,
missing guys
late over the middle. Yeah,
but like that was not the norm for Brock Purdy. I think that it is. I can't read Grant's mind, and clearly business is booming. So what the hell do I know?
Yeah, I mean, Mark says, will Patrick Taylor get some carries this week? Is Tracy Walker playing at free safety? Walker's on the practice squad. They can call him off if they so choose.
Yeah,
I'd love to see Taylor get some carries this week. I kind of feel like if Taylor looks at all like the Taylor that I saw in the third preseason game, I think he might be able to help. So I'm not sure about him yet.
It's interesting that they've played Garendo and not played Taylor yet. That tells me something.
That was my next question. What would you do with Garendo, Cowing, and Mustafa, your 3 4th-round picks going forward? How would you utilize those 3 guys? I think they all need to be utilized. I really do.
Well, they're utilizing Mustafa, and I think that that's somebody that you can bring in to spell Hufanga, and you just say, George, you're back to special teams, baby. If we need you, we'll call you. And maybe you back up, Jair on occasion. But I think that Mustafa deserves a little bit of run there, even if it's just 20, 30% of the snaps.
I
Cal,
agree. Mustafa's got to play. He's too good of a player.
he brings some juice, and if you're gonna suck, bring some juice too. And right now, neither of the Niners safeties are bringing any juice, and they're both kind of.
You got to play Cowing too. I mean, to me, Cowing's got to be out there. You need that vertical threat. You need that space creator. Do not be deathly afraid because he had the fumbled punt.
I'm
Obviously you don't get endless chances, but I mean, I like Cowing. I think Cowing's got to play.
I know you're a Cowing guy, and it was interesting, Kyle, today, kind of just brushing off the Cowing fumble because in the moment it happened, I could just see the press release right now that Trent Taylor has been called up from the practice squad. And guess who's back there just fair catching everything? It's Trent Taylor against the Rams. And I'm still a little bit convinced that can happen. But I don't know if that's exclusive to possibly using Cowing as a wide receiver in this game, which they're absolutely going to have to do whether they want to or not, because he's next up on the depth chart. It's Juwan Jennings. It's a tough scene. It's Ayuk, Jennings, and Cowing. Those are your receivers.
And Garendo, I like using Garendo as a kickoff guy and maybe as a fullback or maybe as a throw it to him out of the backfield. But I think he's a third down back. I think if you hand him the ball and expect him to find soft spots, and he doesn't have the instincts of a running back.
We've only seen one play so far,
but that's what we saw this week. But we saw him in minicamp. We also saw him a little bit more in training camp.
No, it's true.
It's true. He did a lot of those things.
I think he's the second coming of Raheem Mostert. I wouldn't run inside zone with him at all. I wouldn't run any power stuff with him. It's outside zone and to the left all day, every day. And if you need to put in 12 personnel to make it happen, do it, because I think once he gets past that first line, you ain't getting hands on him, much less bringing him down.
I like the idea of throwing him the ball in space and letting him beat one guy. That's why that to me is intriguing.
I don't know if I've ever seen him catch a ball.
He can though. I think that's part of his skill set. Yeah. Vice says my father played O-line for Sac State in the 80s. He's 60 now with heart failure, and I still think he'll do better than Brendel. Oh my God, poor Brendel.
Yeah.
Salvador Lopez, we already answered that one. Titus Moeller. Hey, Titus. He says, do you think Kyle has shown any growth as a coach?
That's a good question.
What do you think, Dieter?
Not as much as I would have maybe liked to say. It's hard to define the growth. I'll say this. Brock's doing a lot of stuff out of center. I think there's a level of pragmatism. I think that he has adapted more to his quarterback than in prior iterations, right? And it's obviously a quarterback with the talent level that demands such concessions, perhaps, for viewing it that way, are made. I'm not sure if that qualifies as growth or not, but I've been positively surprised that he has built game plans and offense around Brock more than I originally expected.
I would say he has grown significantly as a coach. And here's where I would point to.
Yeah.
Usually all coaches have a shelf life. And we saw it with Harbaugh. Who's got it better than us? All that garbage. Yeah. After a while, guys just start tuning that shit out. And that becomes, and I've heard, you guys have heard the term high school Harry. It's kind of high school Harry stuff to this rah stuff. I think where Shanahan has really grown as a coach is in his communication with his players. Mm-hmm. I don't think that he's worn them out with the same old, where they're just burned out and they've heard the same speech repeatedly. I also don't think that he's, he's one of these guys that has 5 different anecdotes. I think he keeps it somewhat real. I think he still gets through to these guys. I see a team that brings a lot of energy, flies around, makes plays for the most part. And I just think that he's, the harder thing to do is continuing to motivate guys in year 5, 6, 7, 8. And I think he's doing a nice job of that. I don't see a bunch of guys who are rolling their eyes like, oh, man, I've heard this 19,000 times. And, it's just so tired and it's a one-trick pony. I think I get the sense that the players still very much are motivated by him and respond to him. So I think that is growth, because that's hard to do in years 8.
I think that the key here is that he's not a rah-rah guy. He's not somebody who's out here trying to be a motivator of men. He's someone who views football from an analytical mindset, and he is out there looking to put pain on a defense. What's the motto? Attack the weak. And he has built up over the years with the guys that he already has on the team. This reverence that they have for him has been hard earned, because he'll say things like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, they're going to do this, we're going to do this, and it's going to go for a 60-yard touchdown. And it happens. It goes down. And I've heard that from so many players. And that is what you present first, as opposed to this sort of, cheerleader guy, this Dan Campbell-esque or the whatever. When you're saying, I can predict the future, and you consistently predict the future, and you put players in positions to succeed in a big way again and again and again, it's hard for that to burn out, because ultimately the goal and the responsibility of a coach is to maximize the potential of the players that you have. And I think Kyle Shanahan has done that time and time again, particularly on the offensive side. And credit to them in the front office, they have picked the right leaders on the defensive side to ensure that no matter who is in charge of the defense as a coach, they still bring it day in and day out. That starts with 54. 97 deserves a lot of credit for that too.
Dominic Hong says, haven't liked the interviews this past week. Seems like a lack of urgency, unlike the last few years. What have you felt or seen? That's interesting. I just really believe that when you climb to the top of the mountain, you get to the NBA Finals, you get to the Super Bowl, that you just don't bring the same level of intensity in the early part of the next season, training camp, early season. It's just hard to mentally and emotionally, I think, get back to that peak. I think what you're seeing here is a team that knows they're good, knows that they got beat legitimately, and there's no real excuses for it. Nope. And also knows that they got the ultimate get right spot here with the Rams staring them in the eye. So if the Niners were facing the Chiefs this week, or the Ravens, or one of these teams that very easily could slap them around and beat them, I think you might have a different vibe. But I think the vibe you're sensing is, hey, you know what? We're pretty good. We lost a game we should win. It's not the end of the world. Right. And we've got a team that we absolutely can dominate this week. And we don't want to say anything too much, but we're not, you know what I mean? I think they're kind of caught in between of not knowing exactly what to say. They don't
want to be out here being like, no, actually none of that shit matters. They don't want to be cocky about it, because they did get beat, right? There needs to be some humility on that. But at the same time, they as you said aptly, they don't want to be out here saying like, oh, we're going to nail them this week. Like, don't worry about it. This is also, it's like any addict. You take a couple hits of the really, really good stuff. This weak ass shit in September ain't going to hit the same way. Like it doesn't move them. And this is an issue that we've talked about ad nauseum. This is called the Super Bowl hangover. And you're going to feel it most acutely early on, particularly when you have theoretically the easy part of your schedule. And maybe that lack of urgency was the thing that bit them against the Vikings, but it's understandable, and it can't continue. They need to have 4 wins on the ledger by the time they go to Seattle on the 10th of October, in my opinion. If not, I guess 5's off the table now. But they need to be 4-1 after these first 5 games. So maybe there's some urgency now, but I don't think they're going to be out here screaming that the sky is falling after losing to Minnesota on the road at 10 a.m. in week 2. I mean, that'd be ridiculous, just as it'd be ridiculous to be saying, actually, we're going to run the table from here on out. Like, we'll find out. But I don't think anything the 49ers say can really do anything. It's going to be what they do that ultimately tells us what they're about. And frankly, I don't know what the line is, Larry, which is embarrassing, because
7.5.
They should win by 7. They should flip and cover. They're a much better team than the Rams that I saw last week. And, sorry, preseason's over now. right? If you wanted to ease into this season and treat it like preseason, it's over now. You got no Debo and no McCaffrey. You better be gunning from the jump. So we'll find out.
No question. Last tweet here from Josh DeBow. And by the way, tomorrow, Josh, I believe, is going to join me on Niners Nightly. He'll be, which is tomorrow night on the radio at 6 o'clock. And Josh, I believe, is going to be my guest. This is interesting, Dieter. We'll finish with this. The 49ers, according to Josh, have allowed opponents to convert 8 of 11 on 3rd and 7 or 7 plus yards. That's 72.7% conversion rate. The rest of the NFL is at 22%.
That checks out. I don't know that off the top of my head, but that makes a lot of sense. And frankly, that's
revealing.
It makes, but when you watch them, right, they're just rushing 4 and dropping 7, and they're dropping 7 into a zone. And a lot of other defensive coordinators are bringing some pressure. They're bringing a 5th man. They're bringing a 6th man. And they're playing man-to-man on the back end, or they're playing a cover 6. And they're daring the opposing quarterback to do something. Nick Sorensen hasn't done it yet. He hasn't felt the need to push that aggression yet. Probably should change this week, because the one guy who can kick your ass wears 9. And everybody else on that team, no offense to Kyron Williams, I'm willing to dare them to beat me. So force the ball out of Stafford's hands as soon as possible. And by the way, with the way your defensive line is playing, you probably have to bring a 5th or a 6th guy. But
my biggest fear with the Rams this week is Jared Verse and Byron Young. They have they don't have Aaron Donald anymore, but they got Jared Verse and Byron Young coming off the edges. Both are 260. Verse is 6'4", 260. Byron Young 6'2", 260. They call him Agent Zero. Those two guys, once again, can be a huge challenge for McGlinchey, huge challenge for Trent. Those two guys are a concern. Dieter, awesome stuff, man. Almost 1,500 people in the room as we call it a night. You got a final thought before we pull the plug on this stream?
Brandon Ayuk wanted to be paid like a first-team All-Pro wide receiver. The 49ers paid him for a player he is yet to be. That has to end on Sunday. He needs to be that player on Sunday. I can give you every excuse in the book for the first 2 weeks. Doesn't fucking matter anymore. He needs 7, 8, 9 catch. He needs to be talking Gronk. You got the man. Number 11 has to be the man. I don't care that it takes 11 players to get somebody the ball. 11's got to be the man on Sunday. Anything less, I wouldn't want to be him. I guess I'd have a really nice place to stay, but I wouldn't want to be him.
I would say the key is Nick Sorensen's defense. Looking at that Josh DeBow stat, needs to be a whole lot better on third downs and 3rd and longs, and get off the field. And the Niners have enough young talent in the secondary. They do. They absolutely do. They got to get the right guys in the right spots, with the right mix. But and we'll see. We'll talk to Sorensen tomorrow.
How much?
That's going to do it for us.
Safeties, Larry.
What's that?
Safety is their destiny. How much of it is not? We're not going to blitz because we don't trust our safeties.
Oh, I know. It's a real problem for the 49ers. It's amazing what a couple weeks of real football show after the preseason shows very little. The Niners maybe don't have a free safety, and it's something to look for. For Dieter, I'm Larry. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Better. Thanks to all of you. And an incredible night. Do we get everybody's super? I think we did. Thank you to everybody. Thanks for supporting the Krug Show. And we're out. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.